Welcome to Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. I am Nick Roloff. We have a loaded show to talk about here today because Mike McDaniel spoke at the NFL Combine this morning, like most coaches did. Not every GM spoke, a.k.a. Chris Greer didn't speak. Some GMs did speak, but McDaniel spoke, and we have a lot to break down. But I wanted to make sure you're following me on Twitter because if you were following me on Twitter, you would know some of the top quotes and takeaways from Mike McDaniel. For example, I tweeted out a video of Mike McDaniel speaking about Jevon Holland's free agency, which we'll actually play that clip later on in the show, so stay tuned for that. But you would have already seen it if you followed me on Twitter. At Nick_Roloff is my handle. Go follow me now for more Dolphins coverage. All right, the number one takeaway from his press conference is that the Dolphins are going to likely be done with Terron Armstead at left tackle for the Miami Dolphins. Now, there was actually an updated report that came out after McDaniel's press conference because at the presser, McDaniel specifically said that Terron Armstead has not made a decision on if he is going to retire or not for the 2025 season, but the Dolphins as a team are operating as if he will not be playing for the Dolphins at left tackle, which means it is fully Patrick Paul season at left tackle, folks. And the Dolphins have much more clarity on that offensive line. And to me, this makes sense. Either way you want to slice it, whether the Dolphins were to move off of Terron Armstead or Armstead were to retire, I think it's in the best interest of the Miami Dolphins to just go in a different direction. Not saying that Terron Armstead can't play because he was actually a top 5 graded offensive tackle in 2024 when he was able to stay on the field. But at 33 years old, he just battled so many injuries, was not able to be on the field consistently. And you drafted Patrick Paul with the second-round pick in the 2024 draft. You invested at your future left tackle last April. And with the offensive line needing so many holes, it's good to know that you're likely going with Patrick Paul to the future. You really are. You have your center and right tackle combination hooked up with Brewer and Austin Jackson. We already have talked about what needs to happen at left guard and right guard this offseason, but now with that note on Armstead, you'll see that name and face Patrick Paul get elevated to that starting left tackle spot. But it actually took a little bit of a turn because we thought that this meant that they might even cut Terron Armstead if he was not going to retire. But Armstead did the Dolphins a pretty big, solid. Ian Rappaport reported it in the afternoon, saying that he plans to take his contract down to the minimum. He was set to make $28.6 million. That's actually not true. His cap hit was $22.8, so I don't understand where Armstead 28.6 came into play from Rappaport. But either way, this allows the Dolphins to save a pretty decent chunk of change in their cap space with 13 days until free agency. This move actually frees up $13.8, $13.9 million in cap space, which puts Miami around $15 million in cap space right now. Terron Armstead making a major move for Miami, lowering his money down to the minimum. Even if he does return or he doesn't return, he did the Dolphins a huge solid by freeing up cap space right now. And this is a big move by Terron. Regardless of how you feel about if he should be the left tackle for Miami in 25 or not, this is a huge favor he just did this Dolphins front office by freeing up cap space. Just show him some love. Spam those 72s down in the comment section. And like I said, this pay cut by Terron Armstead keeps the door open for a return. Like, he's not officially retiring. It seems like the Dolphins could release him post-June 1st and ultimately free up another $1 million in cap space. But at least as of right now, that move by Armstead to take down his contract to the minimum frees up $14 million in cap space, which is huge because Miami is barely cap compliant. But then after this, well, now they actually have a decent amount of cap space, $15.1 million. And even though that is not a lot to overhaul your roster and fill a lot of starting needs that you have, like offensive guard, defensive line, safety, cornerback, it's at least a little bit breathing room. And the Dolphins front office has a lot more decisions to make over the next couple of weeks before free agency because there is a pathway for the Dolphins to free up all the way up to $57 million in cap space without releasing a single player. Yeah, you heard me. All they would have to do is restructure Bradley Chubb, Tua Tagovailoa, Austin Jackson, Zach Sealer. They could even restructure Tyreek Hill, and they could get up to $57 million in cap space, which would give them a lot of breathing room to sign players in free agency. The question is, should they restructure all of those players a la Tua Tagovailoa because his might have the most long-term impact? but it gives the Dolphins options on different ways to create more and more cap space. All right, second biggest takeaway from his press conference is Tyreek Hill. It was widely speculated that Tyreek Hill had surgery early in this offseason on his wrist, but now it is officially known that Tyreek Hill did get surgery. We will show a picture from Tyreek Hill over the weekend in just a second, but I did want to share the clip of Mike McDaniel speaking on Tyreek Hill's injury, so let's toss it over to Mike.
He had surgery on his wrist. It was a ligament issue. It wasn't a broken wrist, and he's scheduled to be running, very soon, in which he'll be rely upon that in his training until he can catch the football, which will be more around summertime going into training camp.
Yeah, Mike McDaniel was speaking at his press conference, but we actually have a photo from Tyreek Hill this weekend. He was on Instagram. He posted this where he showcased this wrist bandage while at one of his stores at Soul Runner, I believe is his store name. And a lot of fans, including myself, speculated that he got surgery early in this offseason. And it obviously did happen because he showcased the wrist bandage and cast over the weekend, but then you just heard Mike McDaniel confirm that he did get surgery on to repair a ligament in his wrist. It was not fractured. It was not broken. It was a ligament. We'll discuss what his timetable will look like in a return for the Miami Dolphins in just a second, but I do want to show some love to Prize Picks, our sponsor on today's show, the number one daily fantasy sports platform in North America. I play Prize Picks every single day, and hopefully you join me. Prize Picks, you can win now up to 1,000 times your money with picking just more or less on 2 or more player stat projections. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25%. Provide even more value for your lineups. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this basketball season, hockey season, baseball season is just around the corner with no football in play. Which players going off, which ones aren't, make your picks in less than 60 seconds. And I got an entry for tonight's action in the association. More than PJ Washington, 16.5 points. More than Jason Tatum, 8.5 rebounds. And then less than Bradley Beal, 18.5 points. Just one example of how you can play. Join me and the millions of others on Prize Picks. Download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. One more time, download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, I want to get back to Tyreek Hill here because it is no surprise that Tyreek Hill ultimately got surgery on his wrist. His agent Drew Rosenhaus kind of hinted at that being necessary. Tyreek Hill hinted at that being a necessity as well. And he did battle the final 3-4 games of the season, pretty much all season long is what it kind of sounded like with that wrist injury. But the question with his surgery to repair that wrist is when will he actually return? Well, Mike McDaniel did kind of say it in that clip that we just showed, what the timetable will be. He will still be able to run. He will still be able to stay in shape and be conditioned. And you still will see him apparently race Noah Lyles as well. But in terms of catching the football and doing football activities, it sounds like he will start catching and using that wrist in the summer near training camp. He will spend the spring running and recovering, as we mentioned, but he will not probably be doing football activities with the Miami Dolphins until training camp in late July. So mandatory minicamp, OTAs, probably something that you will not see Tyreek Hill doing due to that wrist injury recovery. And I want to make sure you are subscribed because we have you covered on everything surrounding the Miami Dolphins. We are 70 subscribers away from 67,600. Hit that sub button because we put out daily content, weekly live shows around the Miami Dolphins, and put out everything you need covering this team. All right, let's round out the show with my last takeaway. Jevon Holland, the top free agent from this past Dolphins season. He is as good as gone. Holland does not seem like he will be returning to this roster. He is likely going to outprice the Miami Dolphins, and the Dolphins roster will need to see a complete overhaul at the safety department. Mike McDaniel shared what his thoughts are on Jevon Holland entering free agency. Let's see what Mike had to say earlier today.
Yeah, I think Jevon has earned the right to go out and test his market, and that's something that I don't look as a negative. Because what I don't want is players being here and wishing they were somewhere else. So, testing the market. This has been a guy that has been a contributor from his rookie year on. That a lot of teams have had the ability to watch him, and we feel good about his ability to test his market, and if business works out appropriately, his ability to be back here. So that process will start. I know he's looking forward to it, and he's earned that.
Yeah, it feels pretty obvious that Jevon Holland's not going to return, right? When you hear Mike McDaniel in that clip use the phrases and verbiage of we're going to let him test the free agent market, and he's deserved to hit that, and he's deserved to see what he is worth on the open market from other NFL teams. That is just speak for, yeah, we're not going to pay that much money for Jevon Holland. And you can make the argument on what he's actually worth in NFL free agency and if he should get paid 15 or 16 million per season or closer to the 18, 19, 20 mil per season that it's rumored he will receive. He's been a fine player for Miami, but assuming that his open market will dictate him getting closer to that 18, 19, 20 million dollars, yeah, that's probably a number that the Dolphins are just unable to reach on an annual average basis, considering they don't have a lot of cap space and they need to address other positions that are more important, like corner, defensive line, offensive line as well. But let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. Predict it for me. Will Jevon Holland return to the Dolphins roster in 2025? Type S for stay, type L for leave. Let me know your thoughts, down in the comment section. I want to actually showcase this tweet, kind of furthering my point, right? There's been other players that left the Dolphins recently where you've seen the same type of verbiage be used by the coaching staff and front office. Christian Wilkins, Mike Gesicki. When you hear coaches and GMs say that these players have earned the right to test free agency, that's just a basic telling you, yeah, we're not paying that. It just is widely known. So if you are someone who is watching this video and still has the optimism and positivity that the Dolphins are going to find a way to re-sign Jevon Holland or franchise tag him, yeah, I would get that out of your system right now. The Dolphins will have 2 brand new starting safeties on this defense for 2025. And that is all right by me. I've said this so many times this offseason, and it's almost like beating a dead horse at this point. But the market is going to dictate $18 million plus for Jevon Holland a season. You just got to look a different way. There is a realistic pathway that the Dolphins could end up signing 2 free agent safeties for the same amount of money. There's a perfect world where the Dolphins sign Andre Cisco and Julian Blackmon in free agency. Do I think they'll sign both? No, probably not. But there's a world where they do on 2 different 3-year deals. Blackmon gets $8 million per season. Cisco gets $9 or $10 million. You could sign 2 starting safeties for the price of 1 in Jevon Holland. And I think a room of Cisco, Blackmon, and Patrick McMorris as your third guy, for example, is much better than Jevon Holland, whatever player you find somehow next to him as well. Like, it's just the versatility you would have in more depth on your roster by using that money to multiple safeties or a different position of need like offensive line just makes way more sense for me. So to me, I'm looking a different direction. Jevon Holland, appreciate the last 4 years you've spent here for the Miami Dolphins. Been a great second-round draft pick in 2020. There's no doubt about that, but it's time that we have to move on. All right, that will do it for today's show. Make sure you're following over on Twitter. At Nick_Roloff is my handle. Like I mentioned earlier, I tweeted out clips from Mike McDaniel's press conference. I'll have clips and updates this entire week on who the Dolphins have met with, which prospects like the Miami Dolphins. So if you want more from the NFL Combine, my Twitter's the place to go, at Nick_Roloff.